Ask the Mayor. Your chance to ask the Mayor of Weymouth, Bob Hedlund, questions about the town of Weymouth and or anything else that you have concerns about. Ask the Mayor is pre-recorded. And now, here's Bob Hedlund.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Ask the Mayor. I'm your intrepid citizen inquisitor, Jim Melody. And as always, I'm joined by our mayor and the leader of our town of Weymouth, Mayor Robert Hedlund. How you doing today, Bob?
Excellent, Jim.
Outstanding. It's been about 4 weeks since we taped our last show, and boy, it seems like Weymouth has been the center of activity on so many levels, if you follow the Ledger, which I do. And Weymouth seems to be on the cover of the Ledger almost every other day with a variety of issues since our last taping.
Some good, some bad.
Some good, some bad. Some really good, and some, I don't know about bad, that seem maybe a little bit more lukewarm. Some of these things seem to be tempest in a teapot. Is that part of your job description, handling all these little...
There's a lot going on, and that's certainly reflected in, looks like you've got a larger amount of questions than we've had in the past.
We do. We have got a very robust folder, so why don't we get right into it, Mayor, if that's okay with you?
Good.
Happy summer, by the way. We're in the middle of July. It's a beautiful day out, and we're, as always, happy to be here and happy you could join us. All right, Mayor Bob.
I just may set the record straight on one thing.
Please do.
I was watching the last episode we did, and we were talking about the level field progress.
Oh, yeah.
And I made reference to the contractor over there, Green Acres.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And in one instance, I mentioned, I think we referred to it twice, and I said Eddie Albert and Eva Gabor, and then subsequent to that, I said it was Zsa Zsa Gabor. I had it right the first time.
Those darn Gabor sisters, you know, you buy one, you get the rest for free, they say back there in the 1940s and 50s.
Do you know?
I'm going to say Hungary.
Very good.
I've got an Eva Gabor poster. Some people had Farrah Fawcett posters in their room. I had Eva Gabor. Or was it Ava? I'm not sure.
You must be a little older then.
I look good for 75, don't I? I'm hanging in there. All right, Mayor. Someone has sent you a message using your contact form on the Weymouth Mass site. If you don't want to receive such emails, you can change your settings. Is this sorry, we don't always see these questions before we start taping. I'm not following this. Are you familiar with this? It's bringing you great humor, I see.
Yeah, there's this question right here.
Okay, sorry, it's very involved. For those of you at home, there's a variety of handwriting. There's several different colors. There's 3 different forms of penmanship on here. I don't know. Last week, I complimented the town on the great job they did repaving Mountain View Road and Cross Street. Now my complaint, who was the Einstein that decided to do construction on Pleasant Street, Mutton Lane, and Middle Street all at the same time? Liberty Industrial Parkway is a disaster. Cars coming down Middle Street have to turn onto the parkway and then exit left onto Pleasant Street. There's a backup of 30 to 40 cars, and of course, no cop to help these people out. Who was the planner for this fiasco?
And I think he wants to be anonymous, I think.
Would you like me, could you answer? If there's an anonymous, I don't see anonymous on here, but there you go.
So I think there was a committee of Einsteins that came up with
that. Congratulations.
So I think the gist of the question is, why is there construction happening all at once at 3 different intersection jobs?
It sounds that way.
Okay, so I think we talked about, in a previous show, the intersection work at Middle and Libby. That had been in the works for a long time. The state, it's a town project, but being funded by the state. And that's obviously to bring signalization into that end of Libby. Later, there'll be a signalization project at the other. Obviously, that intersection is an absolute disaster. It's one of our worst. I think it might be our worst in terms of...
we voted that the #1 accidents site,
well, no,
didn't
we were asked a question in a previous show. It was someone wanted to test us. And I think the worst rated intersection was actually another one that he refers to that's underway for new signalization, and that would be Washington and Pleasant. So you have 3 projects, the Mutton and Washington, Pleasant, and Middle and Libby. So basically, the Mutton in Washington and Mutton in Washington and Pleasant and Washington were put out as one bid. Obviously, they're adjacent to each other. You've got the contractor working simultaneously. The other thing was the same contractor had won the previous bid, so the idea was that to save money because of a more advantageous bid, he would be moving from one intersection project to the other, which is what he's done. The reason that the other one is going on, you've got other subcontractors doing some finish work. Obviously, the lights are installed by a different subcontractor, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, it was a coordination thing in all three, and two of them were bid as a package. So that's why they're happening
Simultaneously.
kind of simultaneously.
Right. I'm by those intersections regularly, and I don't ever recall going by a construction site where I didn't see a police officer on the job. Isn't it the state law that
yeah.
a
So
cop
as
has to be
part
there?
of his other question, he's absolutely correct that we did run into a problem in terms of staffing for the details. The way it works is, we'll go through the Weymouth Police Department for details. If they can't provide the manpower on those details because there is a lot of work going on, then they reach out to other departments and the sheriff's office. Believe it or not, there was a lack of coverage one day because they had exhausted the Weymouth Police Department, the Sheriff's Department, and other local departments like Hingham, Quincy, Braintree, Holbrook. I think we had someone as far away as, I think Whitman actually doing some detail work, an officer from Whitman, or Abington, I think it was Whitman. So basically, and I know the day in question where it was a real problem on Libby and Pleasant because of the detour work. I had a conversation with the police chief. They reassigned some folks, and they have assured me that they've got the coverage moving forward to the completion of the project. So he raises a legitimate point. We did have evidently a day when there was short coverage, which created a huge backup on Libby Parkway.
Boy. So is there somebody at the police department that coordinates all those
Yes.
those details? A
Yes.
specific person? Sounds like a pretty
And we
full-time
ran
job.
into a situation that day because the planning department got involved because they were overseeing the partially of the work. And they were very concerned because they were aware of the complaints. And evidently, and I didn't even know this, but if you exhaust all of the options for police details, the contractor can utilize flagmen. Which, I've never seen a flagman anywhere near Weymouth.
Outside of the
We're a
state,
big
you see
union.
them.
We're Central Mass. They're being used on state projects, but I'm sure there would have been a big controversy had we seen flagmen pop up in Weymouth.
Oh yeah, that's
It's
been an
kind of a
ongoing thing for
controversial
years.
topic on Beacon Hill.
Interesting. Well, I hope our questionnaire can appreciate as a contractor if you have the ability to have a couple of jobs going simultaneously from the cost efficiencies. I'm sure it was factored into the bid, and sometimes there's confusion there, it sounds like. So we apologize for that
The
to our
Washington
buddy
and
here.
Pleasant project, I'm looking forward to completion because that is a horrible intersection if you want to make a left-hand turn if you're coming from Jackson Square. It's a disaster, and that's going to improve that. I think yesterday I sat at that light trying to make a left. I think it cycled 4 times before I could get through the intersection.
Yeah,
So that's
it's
going to be a
tough
big
stuff.
improvement.
Well, on that note, I don't believe there's a question in here, but the big news from the last week was the advent or the beginning of the construction or reconstruction of Route 18 is upon us, it sounds like. That was big doings. I mentioned that Weymouth seems to be
Very
in the news quite a bit.
expensive state project.
And that'll be going on for what, 4 or 5 years?
It's a long project,
Yeah. And what is it from the Stetson building all the way down to where like Trukey's is down on Route
Well,
18?
Yeah, and it covers Abington too. I mean,
Right.
but basically areas where you hadn't seen widen in the previous phase will be brought to the 4 lanes.
So the areas of Route 18 up by South Shore Hospital, for instance, where there already are 4 lanes, they'll be bypassing that and
Down
going.
by the entrance to Union Point, et cetera.
Yeah, all that's okay. So that's where it'll kind of kick back in, huh?
Yep.
Well, that sounds like it's going to be quite an adventure for all the commuters and anyone who travels down that road. But it looks like some work's already been begun. Okay, moving on to our next adventure here. This comes in 2 parts because somebody had written in. Is there any way the lighting on the driveway could be aimed towards the asphalt, opposed to myself and the neighbors' houses?
Was this the Johnny Stat one?
This is the Johnny Stat. This is Johnny Strat, yeah.
Strat.
And it says this issue was resolved, but I'm not really recalling it again as these questions get delivered.
No, so I think that was a follow-up.
Yeah.
It was a question we had over at Cadman Towers, I think. And he had a lighting issue, and we definitely reached out to the Housing Authority, and they have resolved the lighting directional issue. So Mr.
Strat.
Strat can
Johnny Strat.
not have some lighting evidently impacting his window.
Fantastic. Well, again, these are in no particular order. An anonymous inquisitor has written in and says, your sidekick has forced me to not watch the program.
I saw this one because this came in on a different email, but he did identify himself. But I think we probably shouldn't. We shouldn't. We don't want any backlash. So we probably shouldn't mention his name.
Well, and I wasn't planning on doing so, but unfortunately, they're not big fans of your partner.
It's a very. This is more of a comment, I think, than a question. Why don't you read this? Get the full effect here. Pay attention, folks.
Your sidekick has forced me not to watch the programs. Too much jib jab from him, and not enough time to the questions.
Cut out the jibber jabber. Don't be babbling like a fool. Say what you got to say. That's all. Then shut your dang pie hole.
As one of our production assistants referred to, he or she won't get a chance to see that I did read this question out loud as they stop tuning in. But to think that we're losing viewers based on our witty repartee, I find that sad.
Some people tune in to hear, answers to important questions around town and not to hear your recollections of life as a salesman at WBCM or whatever.
Hey, to paraphrase old Abe, the first great Republican, you can please some of the people some of the time, all the people all the time, but never all the people, well, something like that.
But we welcome feedback. We certainly welcome criticism, comments.
Yes, please keep the slings and arrows coming. I've got a big back and a wide back, and please keep those questions coming to askmayorbob@gmail.com. We do take them all. We do read them all. And please feel free to take shots at the mayor as well, as opposed to just me. It's lonely here at the top or the bottom. Are we at the top or the bottom? I'm not sure. Okay, here's one from John Doyle. When is this town going to address the Airbnb situation in Weymouth? It's really nice to know who your neighbors are instead of having new ones every day. I was under the impression that you couldn't rent a house for less than 3 months. Thank you. Mrs. Doyle actually sending it on John Doyle. So that's interesting. I didn't know we had an Airbnb predicament developing here in Weymouth. Is that something that's burning on the stove?
Yes, we've received some complaints.
No kidding. Wow.
We also, actually, one of the councilors, Rebecca Haw, is engaged in this from a council perspective.
Is it a bigger issue in North Weymouth, the properties down by the water, maybe?
Well, that's a point she makes, that it seems, and she's checked, that there's more Airbnb activity in North Weymouth than other parts of the town. But the bottom line on this issue is, obviously, this is a relatively new phenomenon. There is nothing in our town bylaws that addresses the situation from a legal standpoint. The state, obviously, is taking some action in regulating, and I know the governor wants to tax this activity also. So we are somewhat constrained in getting our building department out to actually enforce this. It's kind of a new uncharted territory. We do, and you can mention the date if you'd like. Today is what, the July
23rd, is it?
23rd. So tomorrow, which is a Thursday, we have an internal meeting with our paralegal, with our town solicitor, building department, planning department, and we are trying to come up with some regulations that we can put forward that will allow us and bring some relief to folks like the Doyles who have complaints within the constraints of state law and what we can do within where the state is in regulating these at the moment.
So how would this work? Is there somebody from the town who's supposed to be managing or kind of bird dogging the Airbnb site to call on the people that are renting their properties?
I can't speak in great detail to the legal side of this. We do have a meeting scheduled tomorrow, which I'll certainly learn more. But again, it's something that's it's a new phenomenon out there that's taken hold, and we have nothing that references this kind of activity in our bylaws.
People vacationing in Weymouth.
It's not a hotel. It's not a motel. It doesn't fall under those regulations that we have. So we're looking to address it, and we're taking some steps as early as tomorrow to do that.
I just find it very interesting / amusing that people would be vacationing. Is that what you would use Airbnb to find a vacation spot or a permanent residence?
I've got a friend in Jamaica Plain, and She has, for instance, rented a room to a young Hungarian couple that is making, coming into the United States legally, and rented...
From the Gabors. Maybe related to the...
Two references to Hungary in one show. That's pretty good. And they, rented a room for a month to establish a foothold while they established their citizenship and actually looked for a permanent residence. So there's different, needs for this, I guess, for, in the eyes of people who utilize it.
Very interesting. Well, so there could be a potential tax opportunity for the town. Is that also another arm related to this whole
That's governed by
thing?
the state, and that's something that's an ongoing debate on Beacon Hill at the moment.
Well, interesting. Well, we'll stay tuned. We'll be following up on that.
Some people won't like if they tax it, because in that sense it will legitimize that activity. They're also working to provide some regulations along with the tax issue, but it's such a big phenomenon now that the state sees an opportunity, I guess, for revenue in it.
There was an article in the Globe a couple years ago about how Hull, at the turn of the last century, was one of the most popular resort vacation destination. That was your former district. Apparently, about 100 years ago, people would come from all over the world to go to Hull. There you have it. Well, listen, from the temporary residents to the permanent residents, we've got a question here coming in from Wayne, who asked, I see Weymouth residents getting turned down for buildings on lot sizes not 25,000 square feet or larger. How come we see Union Point being able to build houses on smaller sized lots? Wayne Jenkins wants to know. That's a great question. So is that the minimum size lot now for Weymouth, for a new home to be built,
no,
25,000?
It's been 25. The town took some action years ago. The residential zoning changes that have been made since I've been in office did not change the minimum lot size. It changed lot configurations, percentage of wetlands versus upland, things like that. So you don't have these pork chop lots, things like that. As far as Union Point goes, that was something that was, it's been an evolution, obviously, over the last 20 years in the original enabling legislation, which gave them, so to speak, their own planning and zoning delineations within Union Point.
So they're not subject to the Weymouth bylaws, arguably, as far as this category is concerned?
No, it's set up in the enabling legislation. So that's why you see that cluster, in some cases, zoning over there. Now, we have some input, in a way to suggest changes. There's a housing development that's been proposed at the end of Shea Memorial, where they're dead-ending Shea Memorial now. We didn't like a lot about it. We didn't like the density. We didn't like sidewalk layouts. We didn't like lighting. The planning department vetted that, and about 2 weeks ago, the critique that Weymouth Planning provided to Union Point on that, they accepted our recommendations, but it's still going to be a dense cluster type single-family residence over there. So it's something a little bit beyond our control to see any consistency in zoning. They have a separate arrangement over there, so to speak.
Staying on Union Point, it's not a question that's in here, but a follow-up of the conversation we started last week, the storage of the automobiles and the vehicles down there has become quite a to-do. And we saw, again, I made that earlier reference that Weymouth seems to be in the news. Another one was a mini tiff with the town of Rockland regarding how the vehicles are being allowed to access that property. How's that going?
So the short version, since we dwelled on this in a previous show.
Yes, it's a thorn in a lot of people's paws down there. Big conversation
Most of the cars
point.
are in Rockland. When we were approached, we were concerned about impacts to residents. We suggested we don't have the force of law to dictate what can be done on a state road, but we told the company that's doing the hauling that our preference would be that they not use Route 18. They agreed to that.
Oh, so it's just more of a request than a formal kind of mandate, because they seem to be positioning in the paper as if it was a term.
And our building department notified the Rockland Building Department, and Rockland said it's up to Union Point. So the fact that they weren't proactive like Weymouth was, and now after the fact, there's some whining over there.
Right.
And so that's their problem.
Yeah.
Now, we just had some issues where the access from Union Street was blocked by the company doing the storage. And I know we got a phone call today from a couple of residents over there that they're happy that that entry was restored. They realigned the fence, they changed the lighting, and we've asked their security people to be a little more user-friendly. They were giving some people a hard time who like to walk around there a hard time. So, you know, the ledger thing was fine. It was just Rockland people complaining. I have enough to worry about in Weymouth, where I'm not really worried about Rockland too much.
Well, and I think that was part of your comments in the paper, that you represent Weymouth and obviously the best interests of Weymouth, which is your job.
Yeah, we gave them a courtesy call right from the get-go to tell them what was happening, and they chose to kind of just let it play out without being proactive. So that's their problem.
Hey, another story, we're getting to the back end of our this program. Another story that certainly was in the news that I don't know if you'd like to comment on was the sailing program in Broglio.
Do we have
that developed.
questions on that?
I'm not sure if one came in here for that. I can take a look real quick.
Why don't we save the rowing sailing program for the next show, since it might take a little time.
Okay, I don't see a question in here
I don't
specifically.
want the gentleman who complained about the Jack to write back.
I didn't reveal the gender of that person.
We're going to tape another show today, so we definitely...
Fantastic.
Next show, folks, we're going to talk a little more about rowing and sailing.
Okay, so sounds all right. From Kathy Bevins, I presume, in North Weymouth, because she says, can we get a welcome to North Weymouth and a landscaping sign similar to the new Weymouth Heights sign? Would be perfect at North and Norton in the Triangle by Abigail Adams' house. Thanks, Kathy Bevins.
North and Norton. We'll take a look at that.
Where's Norton? I know where North Street is.
It's up the corner of North.
Aha! You're good.
So
You're very good.
So the signage, the signage at Weymouth Heights, we have obviously tried to work to beautify the town.
I haven't seen it, by the way. Sorry for interrupting. Where is that sign, the sign she's referring to at the Heights?
It's by the old Weymouth Heights train station, historic train station that had been there for a long time, across from Murley's.
Sounds cool.
So our ongoing effort to try to beautify the community, whether it's replacing decrepit guardrails and cleaning up corners, that was a very visible, unsightly corner. And we didn't get much cooperation from the T, so we kind of took some initiative and got that site cleaned up. Dick Murley over at Murley's has agreed to adopt that island.
Oh, great.
The signage was the result of, and on that one I'm trying to remember, but we basically have had great cooperation from businesses in town who have donated money for the signage, so that sign didn't cost us anything.
Fantastic.
And the maintenance obviously is not moving forward costing us anything, since it's part of the Adopt Island. We actually have a couple more of them going up. There'll be one in Central Square that was donated by Metri. I love saying that, Metri. The operator at the Central Square gas station. There's one going up in South Weymouth, Independence Square, Jim. You know where Independence Square is?
I believe it's right where Route 18 and right where the Walgreens is. That's considered.
You surprised me on that one.
I love my Weymouth history.
I know you get outside of that neighborhood, you're a little sketchy.
I drive by there 3 days a week. So wait a minute, by the way, getting back to Central Square, we couldn't get Eddie Page to grab a rake and a lawnmower?
So this stuff is happening. That site has not been suggested before. We will definitely take a look at it.
It sounds awesome. I think those signs are cool, you know, when you come into a town, and as I see some of them, the wooden, some towns use wooden signs, and they seem to, within a year, you know, fall into disrepair.
No, these are pretty solid, and it isn't just the sign, it's the site itself and getting that particular location cleaned up. You'll see the one in Central Square right now, it's getting cleaned up. Obviously the Church Street thing was a mess. It was just overgrown with weeds and sumac and trash. We got another one going in North Weymouth, but I'm going to let it pop up, and she'll probably see it and she'll be surprised. So I'd say there's like 4 or 5 of them going around at different times.
There seems to be so many good stories about residences, businesses in the town, variety of clubs. I know the Weymouth Garden Club maintains that park beside
yes,
the
and this is a
Abigail
great
Adams.
opportunity to give a shout out and thank all of
honestly,
the people who
they do a great job.
Participate in the Adopt a Island program. And anyone who's interested in doing that, I know we have some locations available, and it's actually a program started by Mike Melise on the town council.
Oh, no kidding.
And the town council actually administers the program. Obviously, the DPW cooperates with the signage and placing the signage and all of that. But Mike Melise, and I think Councilor Lacey was involved in it at the time when they started that up, probably a decade ago now.
Thank you, TJ and
not
Mike.
longer.
I think it makes a difference. I mean, driving around and you see those little touches, and it all adds to the whole delivery, I think, as far as this community coming back together. So thanks to all those. I think as we make that comment and send out those thank yous to all the folks who are helping out around town, I think we're in the process of wrapping up this episode of Ask the Mayor. We want to remind everybody to keep those questions coming in to askmayorbob@gmail.com. I think we did just get a couple more minutes. Do we have time for one more question, maybe? All right, we're hearing one more question, so let's let it rip. Well, geez, on that note, talk about such a time. These are not filed in any particular order. Beverly D. Morat wrote in and said, "Dear Mayor, the parks and streets look great. Thank you for all that you have done. Have you considered cutting down some trees on the west side of Great Hill? Years ago, you could look up the river towards Fore River, and the view was spectacular. Thank you, Beverly Snowman D. Morat." And Great Hill looks great anyway. What's she talking about as far as additional trees up there?
Yep, and I know that when we did the state of the North Weymouth, because I got criticized for calling it the state of the town, some North Weymouth people, North Weymouth, very proud, tight-knit community, they wanted it called the state of North Weymouth. So I was calling it the state of North Weymouth / the state of the town, because we talked about some big picture stuff too. That was one of the questions that came up. It might have been the first question. Some people who remember what the view was like decades ago would like to see that restored.
I'm trying to think west side of Great Hill. So if you're looking out to the ocean, the west side would be... it's more
West
north.
side
It's more
would be
north south.
inland,
Yeah, it
right?
would be coming up the hill,
Well,
right?
some people want trees
Yeah.
cut down up there.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, apparently.
Now, there's been a ton of improvements made at Great Hill. It's
No two ways about
looks
it.
a lot better than it did not too long ago.
It looks fantastic.
And some benches put in, and you know, we have a tough time staying on top of things up there. The amount of litter that people dump up there is just insane.
I'm
And Keller Williams, by the way, had a volunteer day up there, and they cleaned it up really nice. But in answer to the tree question,
But I see Easy Disposal up. I'm up there quite a bit. The Easy Disposal guy seems to be up there. Geez, every time I'm up there, so they're doing as best they can, obviously.
Yep. So in answer to the question, every time we cut trees down, there's a cause and effect. People yell. But we have been eradicating sumac in different locations. If you go to the back side of the Lane Beach parking lot, you'll see first time you can see the river now. We cleaned out all the sumac there.
Fantastic.
We got some complaints on that. We got a complaint today about a tree that was cut down across the street from Town Hall, but it was in the way of the entrance for the new Libby field improvements. We'll be dealing with that, I'm sure, in a subsequent question. But it is on the radar screen of our arborist at DPW, and at some point, because it's going to be a labor-intensive job up there, we hope to do some cutback up there. So stay tuned. It probably won't be till fall or spring, but it's definitely on our radar screen. We appreciate the question, and it's not the first time we've got the question.
I saw a couple deer up there less than a month ago, and I was up there for the Weymouth 4th of July fireworks, and it was packed. And usually you can go up there about an hour before the fireworks and drive right up. 3 hours beforehand, I happened to go up there way earlier just for a variety of reasons, and it was almost as jammed.
And the approach to the to the parking lot up there is much different. We paved the street that heads up there.
Looks fantastic. Yeah, the whole thing.
What street is that again?
I don't know, but that was...
Bradley Road.
That had my vote for the #1 road that needed to be paved when we first started the show a year and a half ago. That road was a
Because
mess.
you are a frequent visitor
Yeah,
up there. evidently.
as I've referred to. Hey, so we are officially now wrapping up this episode of Ask the Mayor. Once again, please keep the questions coming to askmayorbob@gmail.com. We appreciate everybody tuning in, and I'm going to work on that jib-jab, Mayor. Stay tuned for Family Affair.
Good one.
Thank you very much.
If you have a question, please email the mayor at askmayorbob@gmail.com. That's askmayorbob@gmail.com. Maybe your question will be answered on the next episode of Ask the Mayor.